I don't really think that we've ever had a single incident with sea level rise. We've been very fortunate when I listen to others explain the horrific incidents that they have been exposed to and the aftermath. We have had many more individual storms that top the shale piles that buffer part of our coast. And we have an emergency response team, but we also have a shared responsibility with the state of New Hampshire. When there is a breach in the shale pile, it's the state whose responsibility it is to come and put that shale pile back in place. When we have some of the storm damage that might leave puddles or boulders, rocks in the road, it's our emergency team that goes out and puts the blockades so that reroutes traffic or attends to any emergencies. So it's a shared responsibility as far as the New Hampshire coast between the state and the local communities. The first event that I personally remember was the hurricane of 1938. It was an event in part because it was a surprise. No one up the East Coast knew it was coming. I think I was 8 years old at the time. And I remember a horrific coloring to the clouds. They were frightening in that they looked like black and blue that has started to heal, that purple and yellowish deep mix. Sometimes it was a strange feeling. Had friends who had the barometers, decorative barometers newly installed in their restaurant. And the man who owned it was really upset with his daughter when I happened to be at the restaurant that afternoon, and the red fluid came up the spout and ran down his newly painted walls in the restaurant. He was very upset, and it wasn't until the next day that he really knew what had happened. So, but as far as emergency response is concerned, as we have moved on, in the hurricane of 1938, all of the boats in our small harbor, and there were a number of lobster boats and private sailboats, they were all out of the harbor and sitting on the road around the rim of it. I remember that clearly as an 8-year-old. We have not seen anything like that since. In fact, I believe Rye has truly been spared, which leads me to feel that the other shoe will drop in time if we move on. What we have seen since I've been a selectman is an increase in the duration of the storms, so that we know if we are going to get a second and a third high tide before the storm abates, then we have to open the emergency shelter in case anyone feels they're going to be isolated and needs to get away from the coast. And we have emergency personnel standing by for whatever it is that might show up. But what we have seen in the aftermath is we are getting what is being termed now nuisance flooding, minor flooding, in the people who are not much above sea level. They're about a few feet above the areas of the marsh, and we have a large amount of marsh. So they submit complaints about the flooding, and at this point we have no way of stopping it.
So what kind of support do you need to help it do that? Help it fight that?
I think it'll require decision making before we actually know what support will be needed. We know, number one, that we have to continue with a partnership with the state. It's a divided responsibility along the coast, and I really feel that we have a good start in that Senator Stiles, who is working on this conference, has not only has the ability, but has used her ability to bring all the players literally to the table to discuss areas. It started with those areas that are problems for us, particularly in the summer months, with the influx of tourists, the number of people, the parking, conditions along the beach, trash, dogs, all kinds of things is what we've been working on. We haven't yet moved to consideration of the tidal rise, and that's what our next step should probably be, is to use the same format of local and state leadership to work on this next phase. Rye contains large areas of marsh. We can't close them off without an environmental disaster, really, as far as life starting in the marsh. So we have big decisions to make. We've spent millions, actually, in the last decade through grants and other monies in restoration of the marshes, and I would hate to see all that go down the drain, so to speak. I would suggest that nothing will happen without it, because the state controls the coastal road, the coastal highway, Route 1A, and the buffering shale piles that protect the marshes. The town, of course, has the access roads that we're responsible for, and our police, our fire, our emergency people are brought in for those kinds of things, and we will be, of course, responsible for sheltering people who are displaced by flooding. So it's a partnership that will continue, I'm sure, and will strengthen, and will have to change focus as times change, which they are.
So,
I don't think I could write it all down. I think I have to keep going back to my notes, but we've had wonderful people talking about so many different areas. I've learned how fortunate we were, but I also get the feeling that action needs to be taken, because if we haven't been faced with this yet, there's a good chance we will be. I look at the spaghetti of routes that a hurricane can take, for instance, and then